Hi, I'm Rafael Moreno, and welcome to the Quarantine Cafe. Before moving to the ACLU to manage their Smart Justice campaign, Dartmouth and magna cum laude Fordham Law School graduate, JANOS MARTON, is currently running for Manhattan District Attorney on the platform of ending political corruption and police negligence, delivering on another key component of his campaign, the reduction in incarceration rates. JANOS has already completed that by being one of the instrumental forces of the closing of New York City's Rikers Island Jail facility. JANOS, welcome to the show. So JANOS, what is the significance of closing down Rikers Island?
So Rikers Island has been a violent and corrupt jail that's totally out of touch with our values as New Yorkers for more than 80 years. And there have been many attempts to reform it and to close it in the past. But finally, after several years of a really community-based campaign that focused on lifting up the voices of people most impacted, we finally are on a path to closing Rikers. We have the complete agreement from the governor, the mayor, the city council. Everybody's on board with closing Rikers and replacing it with a much smaller jail system that incarcerates fewer people and gives better access to treatment and other pathways out of the criminal justice system for most people who come through it. So the significance of closing Rikers is that we will no longer have this penal colony off the coast of the Bronx and Queens, and instead we're going to have a much smaller jail system that is more responsive to the needs of people.
Has the city decided as to what's going to replace Rikers Island?
So the city's more or less decided that what's going to replace Rikers is a system where there are jails in each of the boroughs next to the courthouses that hold a much smaller number of people than the number of people at Rikers. So in Rikers right now, there's about 10,000 jail beds across 10 different jail facilities. Those are all going to be closed, and instead there will be theoretically one jail in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan that will total have about 3,500 people in jail. So it's really shrinking the footprint of how many people are in jail. Now that's not a done deal. There are some people, myself included, who feel we could go even lower with the number of people that we incarcerate. But how we get there between now and then is a matter of passing more criminal justice policies, putting more investments into the community, and electing people who believe in a vision where even fewer people are locked up. That's one of the reasons I'm running for Manhattan District Attorney. And I hope that we, not only that I do well, but that we also elect other people across different political offices who are focused on using other alternatives than jail or prison.
So JANOS, what does it cost New York City taxpayers to keep one person in prison a year?
Sure. So to keep somebody locked up on Rikers Island for a year costs $270,000 per person per year. It's a number that goes up every year because basically the costs of running our jail system keep getting more expensive, but the number of people in jail keeps going down. So every year we're spending staggering amounts of money to incarcerate people. And if you just think about that number, 270,000, again, that number is actually probably low for what the real number is now. You could do all kinds of things with that amount of money. You could put somebody through college for 4 years. You could, get somebody an apartment and buy somebody an apartment in a cheaper part of the city. So it's really a horrendous use of our taxpayer resources to spend that much money locking people up.
That is a significant amount of money, right? So just to reiterate, we're talking about more than $270,000 of taxpayer money that's going into keeping one person incarcerated per year.
That's right. And I mean, the reasons for that is it's expensive to run a island jail. It's like, if you've ever seen a picture of Rikers, it is a huge jail complex. It's complicated to run. You have something like 9,000 correction officers. That's a big part of the cost. So when we talk about shrinking the jail system, we mean having fewer people incarcerated, but we're also talking about a much less expensive, much less sprawling jail system that will cost taxpayers a lot less money.
So JANOS, what's been some of your greatest challenges thus far?
Well, one of the hardest things about working in criminal justice reform is constantly educating the public about the choices that we're making when we choose to lock somebody up. In the short run, it might feel safer to say, well, a person committed a crime, they should do the time. Let's put them in prison for a few years. That'll teach them a lesson. That'll keep us safe. Because that's the narrative that we have been taught, that we've been spoon-fed for many decades. And so when you actually, it takes a while to break it down for people and explain, actually, that might make you feel safe in the short run. But if all we're doing is locking people up for a few months, a few years at a time, and not giving them the support that they need to get their lives back on track, we can't expect to stop the cycle of harm from happening again and again. Really, what's going to make us safer in the long run is to invest in people. It's like my shirt says, people, not prisons, right? To invest in people so that they can actually get their lives together and stop committing harm. That's not as easy a message to get out there as, armed robber, assaults somebody on the street, back page of the New York Post. That's a scary, visceral message to compete with. And so, and all it takes is a few bad stories like that, and people start to get scared. And so what we're competing against, the biggest obstacle to criminal justice reform is really fear, is really talking to people about how even though they're scared of crime, even though they're scared of certain types of people, the way that we can be safer as a society is to invest in each other, invest in communities.
Janos, how do you go about being with the public? How do you go about being with the people, getting in contact with the people, understanding what their needs are, and then attenuating them in such a way that you can deliver?
That's a great question. I think it's very easy for us, for everybody, to wind up in their own bubbles and really only talk to people who agree with you. And one of the differences between being a candidate for office and a lot of other types of work that I've done is that when you're running for office, you have to talk to everybody. So I spend a lot of time talking to a huge cross section of people. I talk to people of all different income groups. I talk to people of all different demographic breakdowns, young people, old people, people who own businesses, people who are experiencing homelessness. And collectively, I'm trying to synthesize what is it that can be the most useful way to keep everybody safe and healthy, and thinking of New York as one community. I mean, we're millions of people. So how do we think about ourselves as a community? The way I tend to do that is by literally going out and talking to people on the street, talking to people at their doors. So, COVID-19 has made that challenging for the last few months. We still try to call people up on the phone, hit them up digitally. And that is still useful, but it doesn't have quite the human element of just being at somebody's door and having a conversation.
Janos, what changes will you impart in the justice system if you are elected the next district attorney of Manhattan?
Yeah, there's three broad categories of what I would do. Number one, when somebody gets in trouble with the law, when they get arrested, I would want to make sure, are we going to actually put this person in jail pre-trial, or are we alternatively going to look for an alternative to incarceration, a program, something that will get their lives back on track? For example, are they struggling with an addiction issue that would be better served by treatment? Are they struggling due to economic desperation and they need to get into some kind of program that will get them on the right track economically? Do they have mental health issues that require seeing a professional that they've never seen before? So that's step one. Step two, let's say we do have somebody who has caused harm, like somebody who's done the kind of crime that makes people pretty upset, and they do end up going to prison. We have to look at our prison sentences not as a way to just feel better about locking somebody up and throwing away the key, but really thinking as a society, what is the best thing? And usually that means shorter sentences, right? We should not be putting people away for 20, 30 years, 15 years, because eventually those people are going to come home. And if they've been removed from society that long, it'll be that much harder to reintegrate them. So shorter prison sentences when we are holding people accountable. And then the third thing I'll do with my office is really use the power of the district attorney's office to go after powerful forces who also break the law and also harm society, but usually get away with it. We're talking about employers who don't pay fair wages to their workers under the law. We're talking about landlords who abuse tenants' rights. We're talking about powerful people who sexually assault women or any victims. And these are people who historically, especially the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, have gotten away with what they do because they're connected, because they're powerful. So even as we're going to be more understanding and work closely with the community on certain street crimes, we're also going to ratchet up our focus on sort of more traditional white collar and privilege crimes.
So, Janos, with misdemeanor crimes or petty crimes, in other communities, they push a lot of public or community service. Is that something that New York City is big on?
Yes and no. So community service is a good idea. It doesn't always manifest the right way in New York. So I'll give an example. When if you for some kinds of petty crimes in New York, community service is given instead of jail, which is a good thing. I'm glad that that is an idea. But if community service just means putting on a jumpsuit and sweeping up trash, for a few hours a day for a few days, I don't really see that as building an attachment to the community. The idea of community service, and this goes hand in hand with restorative justice, which is another concept, right? Is in general, when somebody does harm, we want to hold them accountable, and we want to do that in a way that they will be less likely to do it again. So if you're bringing somebody into community service, you should be coming up with ideas for how they can be helpful to the community in a way that makes them feel closer to it, feels more attached to it. So maybe that means, working at a soup kitchen, serving food. Maybe that means, depending on what the person's been accused of, working with young people, helping seniors. So I see community service really as something that we should be doing more of. But again, the goal should be to get the person who committed petty crimes to feel more attached to their community so they're less likely to harm it. Not just like picking up trash on the street. Like, to me, that just feels like, when can I get this over with? When can I get on with my life and never think about it?
So, if elected, would the ratification of community service to really service the individual into the community, would that be something that you would be willing to take on?
Absolutely. And the great thing is, a lot of these ideas I'm talking about, if they sound pie in the sky, if they sound really ambitious or idealistic, we already do a lot of these things. We just don't do a lot of them at scale. So we have really good mental health programs. We have really good substance use programs. We have good opportunities for young people to work in food trucks, to work in entrepreneurial jobs. We have good community service programs all over the city. I was just volunteering with one, delivering food this morning, in fact. So we have all the things in place. We just need to embrace them more as alternatives to incarceration.
And Janos, as a last word, what would you like to impart on our viewers?
So first of all, the election for district attorney is next spring. So it sounds far away, but now is a perfect time to get involved. They can look up my website, janosforda.com. But most importantly, beyond my race, I really hope that people learn more about the criminal justice system, learn more about how there are a lot of great people trying to work on changing it. And for me, every person that we can keep out of jail and prison and really help them rebuild their lives in a constructive way, that will make us stronger as a community, stronger as a society. And I hope that more people embrace that way of thinking.
Janos Martin, thank you so very much for your time. And for those of you who want to get in contact with Janos, we're going to list all of his information underneath in the description so that you can go to his website or contact him directly, ask him questions, or support him in his campaign. Janos, thank you.
Thank you.